and welcome to our NewsX podcast show, which is Get Candid with Chitvan. Here with me is Doyel Joshi, who is creative director and artist. Welcome to Get Candid with Chitvan, Doyel. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you feeling?
I'm great. So, my very first question to you: how did your individual art practices evolve into a shared vision? How are you feeling? Studio.
It's a big question. My partner and I, we have different practices. I come from a visual sort of fashion background actually, and he comes from like a sound, sonic performance background. And I think that the whole process of getting married and kind of going through the ups and downs and the craziness that happens with just the format of an Indian wedding enabled us to kind of bring our visions together based on everything that we were going through. And it sort of, there was an idea of like sort of bringing our practices together, and that came into existence through the studio.
So nice.
Yeah.
So, my second question to you: yeah, your practices resolve around emotions and art subject. How do you ensure the audience connect on such a deep emotional level?
I think that ultimately we're all human beings and we all want the same things. We all want sort of nurturing and care, and we want acceptance and love and community. And so our practice is very much about going sort of in depth into things that resonate or don't resonate, or things that kind of create a bit of friction or question. And we try to resolve that through the work. Sometimes the work becomes a catalyst to it, and sometimes it is the answer. But really, I think it's not just our work, really, but I think the function of art as such.
So,
Yeah.
nice. So you combine visual, performative, and audio visual art. How do you these mediums enhance the audience experience of empathy and resonations?
I mean, I think it's an interesting time in India, especially because I think the mediums are breaking, and there's art doesn't have to sort of be in a white room on a wall and to be art. I think that there is room for things to be a little bit not so obvious and not so direct, and a little bit kind of in between things. Because life is like that, right? Like you're not just one thing. You're not just a daughter, you're not just a mother, you're many things. You play many roles in your life. And I think that we kind of exist with sound and visuals and feeling and touching and anger. And so because we exist with so many emotions, I think that being able to use so many different really tools to find a way to approach them, or to activate them in a way, feels very natural. And I think that it's an exciting time because I think it's more and more people are looking for that. I think people are titillated by that. You don't want to just sort of see things as they are, but kind of they want to be moved in a big way. And yeah.
So, coming from diverse cultural background, how do you blend Marwari, German, and Bengal heritage into your creative process?
It's another big question. I think that it's not an I think a practice comes from understanding and kind of really trying to like almost pick apart or unthread the nuances of where we come from, and the things that make us who we are ultimately. I see my partner kind of speaking in, but I think especially during the wedding, those sort of like differences in culture or things that kind of, let's say, quote unquote, make us apart, or like are kind of like create differences or diversity and all of that. That is somewhere where like it was really highlighted in the wedding, because you're so faced with your culture and you're so faced with the ideas of gatekeepers of culture, really. And so I think because we had like a very long time to kind of really go through that, not just with each other, but with our families and our extended families and our grandparents and, all of that, and to really understand where things come from. And ultimately, the work is to kind of not disrespect it or go against it, but to really understand more deeply where certain things or these gates of these cultures come from, and how can we adapt them in a way that fits to who we are now and who we want to be, and for the future that we want for ourselves and our children, and so on and so forth. um and kind of reestablishing those rules, if you will, in a way that serves everyone and doesn't sort of inhibit your expression or inhibit who you are, but rather becomes a catalyst for togetherness and community and all of the things that culture, and backgrounds and all of these things kind of give us, actually, you know.
So nice. So my next question to Province at if we was powerful in exploring rent and ownership, what message do you hope resonate most with audience from this installation?
I mean, who are we to tell them what should resonate? But I think it was a very simple idea, because IFP is Ice Factory Ballard Estate. That's literally the name of the venue, and it's like this very cool, hip event space almost, that kind of dives in like modern architecture and things like that. But it used to be an ice factory, and so when we were sort of commissioned to do a work there, we stepped in and we understood that, like, even sort of within the modern architecture and the way that it was built up, it still had the reminiscence of an ice factory, of where the water will drain, and, like, just kind of really how a factory was made more functionally.
Yeah.
And even though it's more minimal and like all of that now, it's really well designed. When we kind of peek behind, we realized that the people that owned this space before it became this cool thing in modern Mumbai, was an ice factory. It's just called Ambiko Ice Factory, and they have like a teeny tiny office behind there, and they used to own this whole space, and then they sold it off. And I think the idea there was really to be almost like paying homage to what it was,
Okay.
and really sort of highlighting the fact that it used to be an ice factory. It's still called Ice Factory.
Hmm.
And so the moment that people come in, you kind of know that it's an ice factory, but the moment that you see like a red ice block 10 feet in your face, made and built by the people who used to own this factory, that became almost our collaborators really for the work, um, I think that was really the idea, you know? Yeah.
So nice. So you mentioned operating in a post-ironic era of meaning making. How do you irony shape your art relevance to modern culture and social narratives?
I mean, it's a big question. I think post-ironic really just means that, you don't need to kind of, there was a moment where you could kind of really be a little bit ironic about things that didn't sit right with you, or things that kind of bugged you, things that you felt like it was in resistance with your true expression. And I would say that was about the 90s, and you wear like super low-rise jeans, and like you could really sort of feel that in the culture, where it was like, oh my God, do not do that. Like, what is happening? And it was done a little bit ironically,
Hmm.
almost to kind of push buttons and things like that. I think now I think like that whole generation has matured a little bit, and we're realizing that, like, in order to exist and progress and grow and kind of be part of culture and just society in general, that somehow going back to where you come from and things that deeply resonate, because the idea is, again, not of rebellion, but the idea is of integration, and how can you kind of really look at things that that have given birth to or like who you are and your person and your mind and your possibilities in the world. How can you kind of look at that in a way that serves you? Can you understand it from a perspective of, like, really going in the direction of how do you build community now, right? Like in a generation where we all have nuclear families, we came away from our grandparents and all of that. The systems in which marriages exist, the systems in which children exist, the systems in which like financial models exist, it really worked, especially in a culture like India. Those things really worked because it worked together. How can you do that now? And what are the pitfalls of doing it alone? And really kind of not going against something, but really feeling, understanding the things that you already have that can maybe work for you, and can you maybe like change it a little bit to serve you and the future, really.
Very true. So, how do you navigate the balance between audience participation and the integrity of your original artist vision?
I think it happens naturally. I think it's very natural for us to kind of, one thing is scale. I think there is something about scale that we really enjoy, because you're immediately humbled by something when you see it. So that one thing is like a physical confrontation to what is happening in front of you. Integration should, in an ideal case, should happen kind of naturally, right? Like if you see a 10-foot red ice block, you want to go touch it. And we were like, oh, should we touch art, and should it be behind like these red ropes or whatever? But I think a visceral sort of reaction, or let's say a more successful work, is when you want to go and like feel it, and you want to see what it does, and you want to see if it colors your hand red. And I think there's an intimacy that is created through that, which I feel like is better when it's not forced. I think it kind of, in better works, you kind of just kind of naturally gravitate towards like wanting to feel it, and interact with it and be part of it, and let it kind of affect you. But yeah, I think it would rather happen naturally, I think.
So, with your practice continuing, evolving, how do you envision the future of How Are You Feeling.studio?
I mean, I think like we began, I think there's such a this is such a beautiful thing happening at the moment, which is that like there's no boundaries between art, architecture, and design, and emotions. And I think all of these things can kind of live together, and more, I think especially like India, I feel like is very ready for that kind of like cross-pollination, and things kind of happening in integration rather than silos, and like having different kind of groups and that work, individually. But I think for us, I think more and more, one, if we can continue to sort of establish our work from a place of honest reflection of our life, I think whatever that brings out, whether it's continues to be installations, whether it is, we are working on our first architectural project at the moment, which is a permanent work. And so I think it's just a response ultimately of like the emotion that you're able to create, and can that resonate with people. And it can be anything from like a building to books to whatever, really. And we enjoy not knowing, and we enjoy yeah.
I don't want to leave you right now, but my last question to you: what role do you believe love and emotion will continue to play in shaping the future of art in a globally connected world?
I mean, I think just this is the practice that I have with my partner. We realize that the moment that we are not coming from a place of love and honesty with each other, the ideas tend to suck. Because I think there is resistance. There's some type of like a boundary that you don't want to cross, or there's some type of a limitation that you're, whether it's a real wall or not. I think there is a limitation that you put on yourself the moment that you are not completely open to a person's vulnerability, their humanity. And I think it just doesn't just go for romantic relationships. I think it's true for like any relationship in your life. And if the function of art is to reflect culture and to reflect kind of deeper sort of human emotions, then I think, I mean, not to preach, but like, is there another way? I don't know. I think that it's almost like a guiding vessel, or a catalyst to art and design and business, and I think all things, really. Yeah.
Art, love, and emotion, boundless timely and ever evolving. Until next time, thank you for being a part of Get Candid with Chitvan. Thank you, Doyle.
Thank you, Chitvan. Thank you.